Well, I've been speaking to a former speechwriter to President George H.W. Bush, Michael Johns, who was in his 20s during his tenure in the White House. From his home in Philadelphia, Mr. Johns told me about the foreign policy legacy of his former boss.
The extraordinary contribution he made, particularly to the end of the Cold War, which could have gone very differently in bringing about a peaceful peaceful end to that Cold War, which didn't involve nuclear conflict or the movement of nuclear weapons or naval conflict or any one of a number of series of negativities that could have occurred as the Cold War ended.
As a speechwriter, how involved was he in the work that you did? Did he contribute an awful lot?
It depended really on what the presentation was. President of the United States, typically was giving a speech or two every given day. Many of them he was not terribly involved in, but we had a very broad understanding, I think, of the messaging of the president and his style. And then in other cases, States of the Union and obviously national addresses to the country, he was immensely involved.
I wanted to ask you about the words that pretty much led to his downfall. Read my lips, no new taxes. I'm wondering if you know where those words came from. Was it personally from himself? Was it a speechwriter? And how much did he come to regret them?
It was part of the convention speech that was developed by speechwriters with his support, and it was a commitment that he had made to the American people. I think it's been misunderstood over time what actually transpired there, in the sense that he ultimately was able to get a commitment for very deep spending cuts in our federal budget that would almost be unprecedented, and in exchange he had agreed to adjust some tax rates, not on a significant level, but in ways that allowed Democrats to present it as depicting him as violating that commitment and that promise. Sadly, they were the ones who drew him into it. They never delivered on the spending cuts that they had promised him, and a lot of us learned a lesson about how difficult and sometimes betrayal-oriented Washington politics can be.
I'm just wondering, finally, if you have any sort of personal anecdotes of being in the White House at that time and working for the president.
He would come over to say hello to us from time to time at times when there was extraordinary things going on. So I think he was very conscious of the amount of hours and work that was associated with our trying to support his communication agenda. And he was always very kind and generous and personal. People gravitated to him. I mean, he was a broadly popular figure among individuals of almost every ideological origin and nature, and a very broad range of personalities. He really worked well with just about everyone.